grew up learning an instrument, there was no such thing as group classes that I was ever aware of, and that's true for pretty much all of my teachers. So it is actually quite a big mental shift. I think we consider group classes and private lessons, that even just that word private lessons, we think of it as the premium product, the private dining room, the private jet, the private whatever it is. And parents think that, and so do teachers. And unless you actually kind of get under the hood a little bit and go, well, what actually are the differences between group and private? It's easy to just assume that that's the truth because it's always been like that and that's how we all do it. So, of course, we should.
Yeah.
So there's a few questions to pose. One is, do we send children to dance classes in private lessons, or swimming classes in private lessons, or karate, or football, or any of the activities that you can think of off the top of your head? It's actually quite rare for there to be a thing that you learn as a private lesson.
Yeah.
Are we such delicate flowers as musicians that we must be wrapped in cotton wool and learn by ourselves? So that's kind of one piece of it. And when you question people with that, they go, oh yeah, never really thought of that way. Another way of thinking about it as well is this happens in music lessons every day of the year in every country in the world. The student comes in, they've been working on something, they play it for the teacher, they get to a part, they make a mistake, and a couple of possible scenarios then roll out. One is that they might stop entirely and go back to the beginning and get to the same part of the song, make the same mistake, stop, go back to the beginning, or they might just kind of rewind and do that tricky part again a few times. And what happens in all those scenarios is that you lose the basic pulse of music. That falls away. And in a private lesson, you can explain to that student, you can say, well, what would happen if you were playing this with other musicians, in an orchestra, in a band, in an ensemble, in any group of musicians playing together? And they can imagine it, and they might go, oh, but other people won't stop. So what would happen? I might sound a bit messy, yeah. And there might be tricky parts for them on their instruments at a different part to where it's tricky for you on your instrument. So can you see how that's a problem? And they understand it, and then you go, great. So now we understand that. Let's do it again, and don't stop, no matter what happens. And they understand, but then they do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And even playing with a metronome, even playing with your teacher as a duet or whatever, it's not the same as playing with your peers. And you can see the penny drop the first time that happens in a class where we're all playing the same thing together and somebody makes a mistake. You can see them viscerally understand that the pulse needs to keep going. And you go, catch up, jump back in, go on. And so from lesson one, they're getting this skill of playing with really good time in a way that I can't teach in a private lesson.
No.
I cannot.
And the skill of jumping on the moving train, which is
Yep. There's no other way to teach it than by doing it.
And so this is the skill that they need.
Yeah.
Is timing. And the fun of it, right? The fun of jumping on the moving train.
The first music humans has ever made was singing together.
Yeah.
All four instruments were invented millennia ago. That's how we started to make music together in an ensemble setting. And there is something kind of, I don't know, tribal about that. There's a feeling that you get with playing with other musicians that you don't get in a practice room by yourself or with a teacher leaning over your shoulder, making you feel nervous. So there's all of that stuff. So there's a couple of pieces to this. One is, as the studio owner, you need to actually understand what the benefits of group lessons are and believe in them. And I think if you just go, oh, the business model is fantastic and that's all you've got, that doesn't work. You've actually got to genuinely understand and believe what the benefits of group classes are. And then you need to make sure that your teachers are on board and your parents are on board. And change is hard for anybody in any setting. For teachers who have taught and feel comfortable and competent to teach how they always have in a private lesson setting, and maybe they're using a method book that they love and they know works and they know it inside out. But when I first came across the idea of group classes, I'm like, well, how can that possibly work? Because students learn at different rates. What I offer is that I tailor the lesson to that student, and I'm using a curriculum which builds in a linear fashion, one thing after the next. So getting to a different headspace requires a few little mental leaps. And one is that every time you teach a beginner, you're replicating much of the same information.
Yep.
So is it actually the best use of your time as a teacher to be doing pretty similar things over and over and over again? And the other is, well, how can a group class possibly work? My students are all going to learn at different rates. And the answer to that is, if you just get your method book that you've been using and try and do it in a group setting, it's doomed to failure. I don't know, that sounds like I'm being dramatic. But what will happen is that if you start with a group of students who are at a similar level, that will work for a period of time. And eventually, someone who's doing a heap of practice is going to be ahead of the class, and someone who's doing no practice is going to fall behind. And eventually, the spread of skills will be such that the group is unworkable. The other problem that you have is that if somebody moves to a different area, or for whatever reason they leave your class and you've got a space in that class, how can you fill it if you're halfway through a book? How can somebody jump in?
This is the exact trouble we had this year. So, you know, I mentioned
so
to you
what materials have you been using? But does it have differentiation built into it?
A little bit, like when, like there are a couple of songs that have more than one part. So I think that, you know, but no, really it doesn't. Not to the point that the teachers need, because we've had this problem where somebody had to, you know, drop out for whatever reason. They actually like nobody said, oh, we just don't like the class or anything. Everybody said they liked it, but, you know, so for whatever reason had to drop out. And then you're left with, you know, when you have a small class anyway, 5 kids who drop out. Well, then you need to fill those spaces, but it's pretty hard to fill them when, oh, we're already halfway through the book.
Everybody else.
And so this was the problem. And
so if she's going, well, I'm teaching my private lessons, I know what I'm doing, I feel comfortable, why should I do something different?
Yeah.
So you have to actually address that. And I pay my teachers the same rate whether they're teaching private or group. I know there are some schools that pay a higher rate for groups, but to me that's problematic, because as I'm responsible for marketing. If there's 2 children or 6 children in the class, it's not the teacher's fault. I'm marketing. So, you know, some people are doing a percentage of the number of students in the class. And I actually had a teacher question it in a staff meeting going, other schools pay more for group classes. And I'm like, So, and we'd literally just gone through all the games and materials that we were doing that term, and the entire table was covered in laminated games and this and that and the lesson plans and the everything. And I went, oh, so we provide all of this material for you. You're not needing to make curriculum. That other school that you were talking about, our teachers expected to provide their own curriculum. Oh, I'm paying you for your time. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend the incentive for teaching group to be, we'll pay you more, because it means if you ever have someone's away sick and you've got to shuffle everything around and suddenly you got a pay cut because you're helping the studio cover somebody's private lesson. No, that all just sounds like something not worth pursuing. So what are the musical advantages in playing in a group? And it's got to be about that, playing as an ensemble. There are some students who find a one-on-one lesson really confronting, that they've got an adult on them for the entire time. It's like being in the beam of the lighthouse. Oh, I'm stuck. This teacher's in my face for the entire lesson. So those students really thrive in a group setting because it's just much more comfortable for them. They're listening and they're hearing and they're interacting, but sometimes the teacher's eyes are on other students in the room, and that's just much more comfortable for them. So there are students who really thrive in a group that are going to be awkward and kind of freeze up a little bit in a private lesson. So we give an opportunity for different students in a group class. And they will say, I learned music when I was a child and they made me do exams and I absolutely hated it and I had to play the same song for 6 months and I quit as soon as I could. But now as an adult, I really wish I still had music in my life.
Yep.
I hear that story quite often and I actually think that's sad.
I'm really tired of hearing that story.
Yeah, you too. So it's not just in Australia, it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Exams aren't the point of music. Why don't people get this idea in ed that it is? Anyway, so I say, I think that's a little bit sad. We don't focus on exams at all here. It's all about having fun and that everyone should be able to have music in their life to some level. What we do in the group classes is the last 5 minutes of the last class of a term, parents come into the classroom and students play a song of their choice from the workbook.
Yeah.
Doesn't get much more casual than that. It's not a separate thing they need to organise a babysitter for their other children. It's not, they have to buy a ticket. They don't have to put their kid in a bow tie. None of that. It's as casual as it could possibly be. And sometimes people say, oh, so it's best to start with as a beginner in groups. And again, that's coming from that mindset of, well, proper, serious, good lessons are private lessons and group lessons are the lesser or whatever. And I mean, it depends on how much time I've got or whatever, but sometimes I go, actually, they can gain a lot from playing in an ensemble and playing with other musicians. And we do have levels that are more complex. And, you know, if the parent has played anything at all, I'll pull out a book and show them. This is the stuff that the later grades do. But in the first sort of 2 weeks of term, and I probably need to communicate this to my teachers better, I want them to be on the lookout of, is anyone in the wrong level? Because we should fix that instantly. We should get onto them and say that, because if you make someone sit through a whole term and they're bored, they're not going to come back. But if you address it straight away and go, we think that they're doing really well, are you available on a Thursday at 4 p.m? Because we've got this class that's at a higher level. And normally the parents are thrilled to hear that their child is a genius and they want heaven and earth to move them to that other class. So the more group classes you have, the easier that is to do because you've got more flexibility in your schedule. So I had 2 students who, and at the end of every term, I get my teachers to literally tick a box for every student that they've got. They're in the right level. They should stay where they are. They need to go down. That's very rare. And they can either stay where they are or they're ready to go up or they're definitely ready to go up. And having that flexibility, if they could stay where they were or they could move up, makes the timetabling so much easier to do. Because there is the 4 difficulty levels built into every song, so you can extend someone in the level that they're at. Or if you know you've only got 1 or 2 students and you really need a third for that new level, then that you know who to choose for that. So the hurdles that are in parents' minds are either my child's only going to get 5 minutes of attention and the rest of the time they're sitting there with their headphones on. Another hurdle is if they do understand how that everyone's playing the same songs together, they'll think either my child will get left behind because they won't know what's going on, or my child will be bored because they'll get the hang of it really fast, and then what do? So then you need to explain the 4 difficulty levels built into every song. And then you let them pause for a second to process that, and then you talk about the cyclical thing about how they'll do as many or as few books as they need.
Right. So if they're not as...
So it is designed to be a good fit for every student wherever they're at.
Right. And to have them move on when they're ready, not just when they, when the year's over or whatever.
She does a fantastic job with her little kids. She's super great personality with little kids. And she's, I almost think we should just get somebody else who's actually genuinely excited about this new way of teaching piano that encourages ensemble playing and all this stuff. Our teacher has never played in an ensemble. That's not her cup of tea. She's a concert pianist. master's in piano performance, like she's not like you. So this is the other reason why, like after seeing you play at the jam, I'm like, Sharon really knows how to play. So like
Solo
you
piano.
obviously, you have an appreciation for learning music in a different way because traditional way didn't sit with you, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of I think
It's a strong motivator, probably.
a strong motivator.
And it's interesting that you say that. I have thought that if you have someone who's studying private lessons with you, trying to get them to move across to group is a really hard sell. And I've pretty much abandoned it.
Yeah.
So if you have a new inquiry, if they're of the right age group and they want to learn piano or guitar, which is what we offer in groups, then I funnel them to group classes. But I hadn't really thought about it from a teacher's perspective because I started the school, it was just me, and every teacher that I've recruited, I've said, we're all about group lessons. That's what we teach here. How do you feel about that? I've never had somebody who's come from a solo classical background and tried to convert them to, maybe you're right, maybe just leave her doing what she's great at. And maybe, in 6 months or a year when you've got group classes up and running and they're going really well, just say to her, look, it'd be really good if, the other teachers are away sick or something, or they're on holidays and we need someone to fill in. I think it'd just be really useful for you to observe a class or two just so that you get the feel for it. If she sees it in action.
I'm sure that would make a difference.
Yeah.
Now, what about the classroom management skills?
One of them was, if you are interacting with one student, you must always make sure everybody else in the room has something productive to be doing. Never ever talk to one student and everyone else is just sitting there going, huh?
Because they'll be dogpiling.
Hands is the beginning of behaviours that you don't want. So that's one of them. Trying to put yourself in the shoes of someone who's a complete beginner and understand what it's like to not know what you mean when you say, play C for me, or which finger number it is. And there's a weird paradox. If someone's a really competent musician, if they can read music really competently, it's way harder for them to teach it. Have you found that?
Yes.
I would call myself a pretty mediocre sight reader. I'm not great at it. I've become better the longer I've taught. But I can remember, like it was yesterday, looking at all that notation and not understanding what it sounds like. And for people that look at it and immediately know what it sounds like, that's really tough to be able to break it down into the components of what you need to do in what order in order to teach it. It has to start from being able to put yourself in the shoes of the student who doesn't know any of this stuff and it's all brand new. So not being given something concrete to do leads towards undesired behaviours, and being completely bewildered and have no clue what you're being asked to do can also lead to those behaviours, or just people that just sit there and don't want to do anything. Lots of kids, particularly lots of boys, cannot sit still for 30 minutes at an instrument, so don't ask them to.
Biggest thing right now, we don't have like very big rooms. We have one sizable, not that sizable. It's good for about 6 people, 7 people, maybe not a very big room. So we are limited in space in terms of, and so we don't have a lot of.
So I recently moved, but before I moved, I only had one room for groups, and it had 2 rows of keyboards in it.
Yeah.
And what
they're in the back or like where they're facing, so
they were all facing the front so that they could see the data projector.
Just 2 rows facing the projector.
So what we would do for the group guitar classes is move the front row of keyboards forward and the back row of keyboards back. And all of the piano stools became for the guitar students to sit on, and we just put some music stands in. and
Yeah.
they were often sharing one music stand between two guitarists because we didn't have space to do it any other way.
Right.
And we had a little amp in the corner and brightly coloured guitar leads. So whoever, it was really obvious of who was plugged into which channel.
Yeah.
So if you ever need to turn him up or down. And we did it like that for, I don't know, at least a year.
Yeah. We're using electric guitars.
Totally up to the students. So we would have a combo in any given class.
Yeah.
And so we'd position the electric guitarist closest to the amp and the acoustic guitarist further away. And also you need to keep note of who's left hand and who's right hand, otherwise they bash into each other. So this is the fruit one. So in this book, those are the chords they're going to learn. And you start with a one-note song. There's a chord symbol, and there's the tablature as well. And then we add another note to it. So all of the songs have chords, notes, and tablature, and a little diagram to fill in what they have just learned, and objectives down the bottom.
Right.
I've got some more notes, and now we've got two parts.
Oh yeah.
And so do you have some of them picking the melody and some playing the chords?
Yeah, so we do have lesson plans. Where's that? No, I have to share both now. Share the whole screen. Otherwise you won't be able to see what I'm doing. So this is the lesson plans and the workbook. So song 3. So they're learning a G. I just realised that's different to each other. And that explains what the extension is and the challenges down the bottom. The main melody, tablature, main melody, notation, chords, and play the simpler melody, part 2.
Yes, right.
So
Well, that's great. Really clearly laid out. There's lesson 4.
Is avocado a fruit?
it actually is.
It is. It has a pit.
It does.
Oh, okay.
Every book has 4 types: home print, commercial print with the trim marks, US letter, and A4.
Yeah.
So
So this is the pets, and they're learning some notes on the
I've got 6 I need.
Yeah, so 2 strings at a time. Okay, yeah, but 4 notes. Okay, not going to the 3rd fret yet. Okay, there we go. There's some D's and G's.
So that one's kind of like a bass line, so they've got 2 notes in it.
Okay.
And this is in 3 parts, the last song of the book.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So then we've got a few more chords. We've got some power chords in this book.
Okay.
2 parts.
Yeah, it looks very nice. And done a lot of work on the graphics and keeping it all clear and not too busy.
Not too much going on. Yeah.
So there's not too many things for the eye to have to track. That's wise. And the perception of groups being less ideal than privates. Did you adjust prices to kind of accommodate for that, or you just say here's the prices? It's
So it is cheaper to do a group class than a private class, and over time I've pretty close to kept the private lessons. I've kept the group lessons almost the same. It's gone up a tiny bit, and the private lessons I've made more expensive because I wanted to make the gap bigger.
Yeah.
It's more incentive for people to do groups.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of did something similar in this 2 group like piano classes that we offered this year that we trialed that program basically and just trying to get it off the ground. And I think we priced a 45-minute group class at $39, whereas a private 30-minute lesson is $46.
Yes.
A bit lower price. Or was it the same price for 45 minutes?
I always think that people should do group classes because they're good, not because they're cheap.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, exactly.
Your marketing should always be about what's great about them. And people
Yeah.
can work it out for themselves that it's cheaper than a private lesson.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I agree. Yeah.
I never advertise, do this because it's cheaper than private, because nobody wants
Yeah.
a cheap thing for their kid. They want something that's good for their kid, and so they should.
I get that too, but I'm just the question comes up for people.
Right. That they do ask the question for sure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Sharon, for all of this. It's you know, I feel like it just kind of affirms what we already, you know, were thinking, but it helps, you know, when we go to, whether it's our current teachers we talk to or bringing someone else in, you know, to say, we know people who offer this program and they really love it, and this is why, and you know, so it's really, really helpful.
Just to hear your perspective on it, it's really helpful actually, and we'll keep pecking away on our
Good
intake
luck.
chart.
Thanks.
See ya. Bye.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Bye.